Hey, it's Devin Naika from Retirement Wellness SA. And today I've been asked a question that probably is something that you've asked maybe once or twice or pretty often in your life. And that is, what's the easiest and perhaps best way for you to grow your wealth? Now, when it comes to building your wealth, one of the challenges that we have is we all want to make a lot of money, but we also want to make that money in a very short space of time. And that desire to make quick wealth is where a lot of people can fall short. You may get into some kind of business venture without understanding the full effects, the impacts of that business. And as a result of it, the business might not perform the way that you wanted it, and you might end up closing it or making losses. You might get into some kind of investment with the intention of growing your wealth exponentially, but then you're heavily exposed to the markets, and a market crash means that you lose quite a significant chunk of your money. You might go into some kind of riskier investments like perhaps, cryptocurrency, which is high risk. It's unregulated at the time of me doing this video. And therein lies a great deal of risk for you. So what's the easiest, best way for you to grow your wealth? Well, that's what I'm going to show you in this video. Let's hop over to the iPad. Now, one of the key areas I want you to pay attention to is usually when an individual focuses on growing wealth, we tend to think about the common things. So one of the first things we want to start up is a business. And it's true, you can grow wealth using a business. You might have some skills right now, but running a business is not as easy as what it's perceived to be. And that's the reason why most businesses fail within the first 5 years. In fact, there's a very small percentage of businesses that are successful and can make it past the 5-year mark. And the reason for that is, if you think about your skill right now, your skill right now lies in a certain area. It's something that you've been working throughout your life for or in. And when you're starting up a business, perhaps you're not running a business. You are currently working in a place and maybe you're earning a salary. So what you're able to see is how you're able to get that salary. But the running of the business itself, a lot of those things might not be aware to you. And if you want to get into some kind of business, it's important for you to know all the elements of that business before you start it up. So I'm not saying it's not a good idea, but in order for you to be successful, you don't want to think about a business in a short-term perspective. So if I look at myself, for example, when I got into running my practice, my focus and this was way back 2007 when I started, was I want to do this for the rest of my life. This is something that I enjoy, that I love. It's something that I know I can use to help people and at the same time earn an income. So I'm starting up a business because in the long term, this is what I want to do. Now, I want to ask you, your focus around running a business, is it a long-term view? Because if you have that long-term view, then you know that the business can sustain itself and it's going to get you the kind of wealth that you're aiming to acquire. But more importantly, it's going to help you during those moments that the business is not performing well, because business goes through ups and downs. And if you focused on the long term, you're going to be aware of that. And when the downs come, you'll be able to ride them and conquer them with ease. But that's one way, but not necessarily the easiest way, because running a business is out of reach for quite a lot of people. And perhaps you might feel, hey, at this point in time, you're not ready to start up a business. The second thing that you can look into is, and also very, very common, is property. And the thing about property is a lot of the risks behind property is camouflaged. It's hidden. So you might have individuals that say, they've invested in a property and they're able to get this rental, and the rental is enough to settle the bond. Now that's great, but it does take some time before we reach that point. So when you're focusing on a property, here's some of the things you want to pay attention to. You want to look at what are the costs of the property. Now, it's not just your bond that you want to cover. Sometimes it is the bond. Sometimes it could be levy. So if you're living inside of, let's say, an estate or a complex, then you've got a levy that you've got to pay, which means you want to be mindful of those. Then you also have utilities. Remember, the person who is renting, if they're going to cover all of these expenses, then they might as well finance the property on their own. So chances are in the beginning, some of these costs are going to fall to you. And over a period of time is where you can start to get to a break even, and then it becomes profitable. Then you want to consider the quality of your tenant. It's not as easy now to get rid of a person, get rid of a tenant from your property. It's not as easy as what it used to be. It's quite a detailed process, and sometimes they might damage your place. So you might end up having someone who is staying there but not paying your rental income. You might end up having someone who is moving out and then they damaging your property, in which case you've got to factor another cost, which is insurance. So you've got a number of things to consider before investing into property. Whilst the property itself might appreciate, it should appreciate in value depending on where you're investing, you want to have a look at all of the costs that you had when you started up. Add it up to your property costs in order to know what your total cost is. And then if you do end up selling the property, that's what you want to see. Now, there are many instances, and you might not get to know about it, but people tend to talk only about their wins. But there's often people that have purchased a property and they sold that property. They were not able to recover from the costs that they had in that property, in which case this was a loss. Property is also a long-term vehicle. So it's something that can build wealth, but you need a bit of time before you start to get that to work. It's also out of reach for a lot of individuals. And the reason is you need to have the finance in order to get a bond. And just the entire process of getting the property can be a bit challenging in the beginning. There are lots of people that have been successful with it. Again, just like a business, you need to make sure you are researching that and you have a long-term view with it. But if you're just earning a salary and right now you're not focused so much on a business and you're not focused so much on a property, what's the easiest way then in order for you to grow your wealth? And here it is. The easiest way to do this is in a retirement annuity. Now, I know this sounds too simple, but there's a lot of benefits that a retirement annuity can bring to you, which we don't get in other sectors. Remember, the focus here is around building wealth, and wealth is built over a period of time. So what's beneficial with the retirement annuity is it conditions you to save for a certain period. So you're normally starting at year X, and the earliest you can release that is at age 55, which means you've got a long period with which to save money here. And over that period, this is how you're going to accumulate wealth. But here are some other benefits that the RA offers you. The growth inside the retirement annuity is taxed at 0%. What that means is if that retirement annuity performs well, and let's assume in a year you make 100,000 in growth, in interest or returns or dividends, the tax rate applied to that is 0. Now compare that to a business. If you're running a business and you're earning some growth, the profits that you make is going to be subject to tax. In addition, same with the property. The rental that you are earning, you are now receiving an income, which means that income is added to your other earnings and it also becomes taxable. Whereas in a retirement annuity, you're getting that at 0. In addition to that, remember we're focusing on building wealth in the long term. The growth inside the retirement annuity is a lot more, I'm going to use the word certain. And the reason why I'm saying certain is because you know that your retirement annuity can only be released at age 55. Usually there's a tendency to stay committed to that vehicle for the long term. In contrast, when running a business, if things get tough, you might want to come away from that business to, a bit earlier than what was initially planned. Same on the property, you might want to come away a bit earlier than what was planned. With a retirement annuity, your growth is a bit more certain because now you already know it's a long-term view. You're focusing on accessing that money only at the time that you are retiring, and that's could be a while from now. And one more secret I want to share with you is The retirement annuity saves you on a tax called estate duty. Estate duty is a tax that we pay at the time that we pass away. So it's a tax you would pay at the time that you're not around. What government does is they look at all of your assets, and if it exceeds a certain amount, they would tax you on that entire estate. Now, these form part of that estate. So a business increases the value of your estate. A property increases the value of your estate. But the retirement annuity will not increase the value of your estate. And because it doesn't increase the value of your estate, you don't have that estate duty. Meaning if you've got a business and it's valued at 2 million, your estate just went up by 2 million. If you have a property and it's valued at 2 million, your estate just went up at 2 million. And if you have a retirement annuity, it's valued at 2 million, your estate goes up at 0 because it is not factored. Estate duty is calculated at a rate of 20%. So again, when you're focusing on wealth, we're not just focusing now, we're thinking about multiple aspects. Can I share one more secret tip with you? Inside a retirement annuity, you don't have what is called capital gains tax. And capital gains tax is a tax that you pay on the sale of an asset. So for example, you started your business. Initially, the business was valued at R1 million and you're selling it for 5 million. You've made a gain in your business of 4 million. That is subject to tax. You invested in a property for R1 million. You're now selling that property for 3 million. You've made a gain of 2 million, which is subject to tax. In a retirement annuity, you are investing inside shares in companies. When those shares of those companies get sold because you are now retiring, naturally you have acquired this gain in the share, but there's no capital gains tax inside your retirement annuity, which is another huge benefit. So the retirement annuity is a very powerful vehicle that can easily grow your wealth, especially if you're focusing on the long term and you don't want to have too much of risk. Remember, you can also choose the kind of funds that you are investing your money in. You can use low risk, medium risk. There's funds that offer guarantees. So that can also determine the performance of that retirement annuity and also ultimately how your wealth grows. I hope you found this video extremely insightful. In fact, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this? Has this changed your outlook on a retirement annuity? And remember, I haven't even mentioned that a retirement annuity gives you a tax rebate. So every year that you're contributing, you're able to claim some of that back as a tax benefit. So much more value behind the retirement annuity. If you found the video helpful, please click on the thumbs up sign to like it. And remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel so that you get to know when